David, today's show is going to be very exciting for our regular viewers. You've made a, frankly, startling discovery, as you always do. How are you this morning, David?
I'm very well, Jason. Given that I'm 76, mildly excited.
You know, David, as I was looking at the playlist a moment ago on your beautifully designed reverse CSI scripts website, I was just updating the playlist, and I think people who have visited the site know that they can keep up with our YouTube videos just by visiting reverse CSI scripts and going to the playlist area. Today's video is already listed there, but I was looking at the video where you and I were walking through downtown Vancouver and heading over to 425 Carroll Street when I had come to visit you there just a couple weeks ago. And I said to myself, you know, David is remarkably fit for a man of his age.
Yeah, and it was pointed out I was wearing a sweater, but I didn't want to show that my suspenders were broken and people would, subject me to ridicule. So I was sweating like a mule, right?
It was hot. It was. But that was a great little series of videos that we did, and people can check those out. They are, I think we made those available. Yeah, those were on YouTube. But I think at this point, David, most people know that you and I are doing an exclusive subscriber-only series that people can access on patreon.com/reverse CSI storyboards and patreon.com/crowdsource the truth, as well as subscribestar.com/crowdsource the truth. And forgive me for not having our graphic ready to illustrate that to everyone, but it's a valuable resource, and it's really important that people who watch and enjoy Crowdsource the Truth and Discovery CSI sponsor the show, because we've been seeing what's been going on in the world of social media. They like to purge people that publish unpopular stories. I think that would include you and I. And it's really not ideal for people to sponsor only Crowdsource the Truth, because then my guests don't have a way to sustain their operations. And of course, you're going to be able to have access to exclusive content on patreon.com/reverse CSI storyboards. David's one of his recent posts is talking all about the topic we'll get into today. David has provided some references that people can study at their leisure, and this post is titled, "Can SERCO Artificial Reality Messages Create Real Shooting or Bombing Events?" And David, I find this particularly interesting because we've all heard of artificial intelligence, and we've heard of virtual reality, but this is literally the first time I've heard the phrase artificial reality being used. Can you help us understand what that refers to?
Well, it emerged, at least in my consciousness, about 4 or 5 days ago when I discovered this patent. And remember, SERCO, as most people now should understand, controls most of the American government's agencies, including in particular the United States Patent and Trademark Office. And in November the 17th, it processed the 4 millionth patent for the US Patent and Trademark Office. So there's a minefield, a gold mine perhaps, of truth or reality in what is being processed by SERCO. And then what I discovered, and in this patent or series of references, there are 3 references that I think people should find particularly interesting before they start either criticizing or critiquing what you and I do. And I actually think now that you and I are probably the only people to build a bridge between artificial reality messaging as practiced by various social networks, including some of the networks that are giving you trouble, and the reality of these bombing and shooting events that seem otherwise inexplicable unless you assume that America is run by psychopaths. And I think there are certainly psychopaths embedded in the networks, in social networks, but I don't think America as a whole is guilty of that. Now, the first one relates to the Baginski story, where after 9/11, she gathered together a group of 50 specialists in the National Security Agency, and she told them 911 is a gift to the NSA. We're going to get all the money we want, which of course is an appalling comment. to people who are professionally employed or were employed to protect America against the attack of 911, which killed, I think, nearly 3,000 Americans and 60 Brits and I believe 40 Australians. And So that's a comment that really needs explanation. The second reference in this list of references is a system and method for creating and sharing an event using a social network. And when we go into the show, Patreon only show, we can go into detail about that. But just a little excerpt from that is a system and method for creating and viewing artificial reality messages at an event, such as a sporting event, and sharing the event on a social network, thereby enhancing and expanding the participant and spectator experience. Well, the hairs on the back of my neck, and I hope the hairs on the back of the neck of our collective audience could go back, because what are you doing here? You're enhancing the participant and spectator experience. What about if they're experiencing one of the adult and child hardcore pornography movies apparently distributed by Starnet Communications out of Vancouver into 66 countries? Anyway, moving on. The third reference is to a raid, and I'll read that. Global swoop on newsgroup pedophiles, 28th of November 2001. More than 130 people in 19 different countries have been arrested or are under investigation after police traced the distribution of child pornography through different internet news groups. Technical experts at UK internet service provider Demon Internet aided officers from the National Crime Squad new high-tech crime unit with the investigation. And it turns out that technical experts from Demon helped officers distinguish the identifying information contained within the message headers, and we can come to that in the next part of the show. But the software has been developed in conjunction with UK company SERCO, although no technical details have been released. So this is, I don't know if I could spell epiphany, I mean, I'm not sure I've had one, and I think they can be fairly uncomfortable if they happen on a surprise. But essentially, it would appear that after 911, a series of pedophile news groups were raided on the basis of SERCO tracking face recognition through them. But what about, Jason, the pedophile news groups that were not raided?
What do you mean?
Right? So if you have a group of people, you know, like that might be tempted to plant artificial reality messages that would lead people to believe there was a dirty bomb in the port of Charleston, what happens if they were disciplined, controlled, or frightened, or manipulated because they'd also been downloading child pornography and therefore could potentially be arrested, placed in jail, where I believe the fate of pedophiles in a heterosexual jail or a jail predominantly controlled by heterosexual gangs, etc., they're going to lose a crucial part of their anatomy. Over to you.
Right. I don't know that a heterosexual jail is an actual thing from everything we've seen in movies and heard from people who have been to jail, but I take the point that you're making. And David, it's important that people realize that what we're watching right now is a preview of the show that's going to begin at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. Viewers can join us by going to patreon.com/reverse CSI storyboards and sponsoring David's page, or alternatively by going to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth or subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. And I misspeak when I say alternatively, because it is my hope that viewers will split any sponsorship payment in both pages so that the show can sustain. We've been hearing about these red flag laws in the United States, David, and I think that you and I would fall into the category of conspiracy theorists according to the FBI. but I wouldn't take that too personally. We know the FBI has a horrendous reputation, and we've been speaking about them quite extensively. We see two smiling, treasonous, I don't even know what the word to describe these two would be, but in this photograph we can see a much younger, possibly less inebriated Robert Mueller and Maureen Baginski testifying about something before Congress. But of course, Maureen Baginski went on from her role at the NSA to help the FBI form a counterintelligence unit. Was that it? What did she do exactly at the FBI, David?
Well, absolutely. She developed an intelligence network for the FBI, but it's hard for me to believe, as a Brit/Canadian, that the FBI didn't have an intelligence network before.
Well,
but
wait.
I think Baginski did.
Let me pause you, because if the exact language is an intelligence network, we need to explore that. I'm deeply steeped in the world of litigation right now, and of course we all know that lawyers, which Robert Mueller is, they speak very deliberately, and their words often have meanings that are perhaps not initially obvious. Now, at the FBI, an intelligence network could be a network of humans, HumInt, we've heard of human intelligence, but it could be that the FBI had a long-standing network of human intelligence, but a very poor signals intelligence network. Perhaps Maureen Baginski brought in computers and computer software and various things that enhanced the FBI's ability to spy on Americans and conduct clandestine surveillance, perhaps in defiance of constitutional protections. That might be what it is.
Absolutely, and it also might have left the FBI vulnerable to penetration by pedophile news groups. So, if I may, I think I've got enough time.
Yeah.
If I just read the excerpt about Maureen Baginski, so the beauty of that is one could argue that these kind of references where SERCO is describing the woman's career is the truth, I mean, as perceived or described by SERCO, and then we can take those truths and see, does that correlate with this artificial reality messaging or the creation of hoaxes or even sabotaging a crime scene investigation by the FBI. So, so SERCO announced December the 8th, 2009, that Maureen Baginski has been named Vice President of the Intelligence Business and National Security Advisor at SERCO. Well, National Security Advisor at SERCO, the initial of that is NSA.
Whoa.
So essentially, I believe that SERCO actually extorted people within the American government and the Five Eyes government more generally to hand over prime government or responsibility of the public functions to a private enterprise controlled by a corrupt group of shareholders, including in the case of SERCO, the Saudi Arabian government. Anyway, I continue. Has almost 3 decades of, this is Maureen Baginski, has almost 3 decades of service in the United States intelligence community. I'm starting to think the United States intelligence community is an oxymoron, but
yes,
we can, I divert. Most recently, Ms. Baginski was president of the National Security Systems sector for Sparta Inc., and prior to that, a director in Bearing Point's intelligence sector. She also served on SI International's board of directors until it was acquired by SERCO in December 2009. From 2003 to 2005, Ms. Baginski served as the FBI's Executive Assistant Director for Intelligence, where she was responsible for establishing and managing the FBI's first ever intelligence program. This is the woman who said 911 was a gift to the NSA. Her mission was to adapt FBI intelligence capabilities with information technologies to create an intelligence sharing operation that could identify threats before they became attacks. Well, it's done a great job, right? From 1979 to 2003, Ms. Baginski served at the National Security Agency, NSA, where she held a variety of positions, including signals intelligence, like you said, SIGINT director, senior operations director in the national security, But I mean, this woman is toxic, Jason, absolutely toxic. We should bring her down.
Well, legally speaking, of course, we're going to try to expose what she's done. And I mean, she's definitely friends with all the wrong people. So, David, we're just about at the end of our preview show here, and people are going to be able to watch the full in-depth overview to understand exactly what this artificial reality messaging is and what it means to everyone in America, and what's happened most recently with these double mass shootings. People are going to want to join us in just about 15 minutes at 1:30 p.m. Eastern on patreon.com/reverse CSI storyboards and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth or subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. And you know, David, I've just received an email from a viewer who has asked me if it's possible to utilize the very handy YouTube feature of playing back an interview at double speed. And I did a little bit of research. It required me to upgrade something on Vimeo, but I've done that, so now our Patreon sponsors will have the convenience of being able to watch the videos at normal speed or even slightly faster if they want to get more information jammed into their brains, like doubling the output of the fire hose. So that'll be a good benefit for everybody on Patreon and Subscribestar.
I think you should be kind to septuagenarians. I don't want to double the rate of input. Maybe hard.
It's an option. It's an option for people to select. So David, we'll be back in just 15 minutes, and I'm very excited to learn more about this artificial reality. I want to thank everybody for watching, and we'll see you on Patreon and Subscribestar.